Good evening, Mr. Maimane. Thanks very much for your time. If you could just clarify for us, you're confirming, you're saying that Joe Gumede, the chair of BOSASA, has written to you confirming that he has sought permission from Andile Ramaphosa's companies to disclose the contracts that exist between those companies and BOSASA. But isn't that what Cyril Ramaphosa has told Parliament already?
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to fellow South Africans. What's absolutely crucial here is that we've been requesting these contracts. We've launched what we call a PIA application, which is access to information. And up until recently, no one has been forthcoming with bringing that information. Now, that information is crucial because the president says he saw a contract between BOSASA and his son, then subsequently said no. Actually, that was campaign financing. And what we want to argue is that it's not for me to decide whether the politician is telling the truth or not. That's up to the public protector. What is important for the people of South Africa is that when a company is set up and proceeds that emerge from state contracts end up in the president's son, we need to know what the terms of those contracts are. And it then becomes important that we get the details so that we alleviate the very clear conflict of interest that is apparent here and hold the people accountable when it comes to all of these contracts that have been circulating.
I'm interested in what you hope to find there, because one can't imagine someone writing in a contract, for example, that we want to do business with you so that your father can then, give us some contracts when he, eventually gets into power. So what is it that you think you may be able to find?
Well, I think that's a very important question, Vuyo, because you will recall when Duduzane Zuma was getting contracts, even though those contracts could have been seen in one way, we want to see what did the president see, the amount of 500,000, to what purpose was it? And furthermore, in campaign financing, this whole triangle of corruption that is occurring, we must short-circuit it, because BOSASA have benefited from the state over 12 billion rands worth of contracts. And ultimately, we think there's a clear conflict of interest. So if you are paying somebody contractually, we demand to know for what services. What qualifies Mr. Ramaphosa's son other than that he's the son of the president? We can't apply false morality as a country. It wouldn't matter who it is. It's important that all business transactions are transparent, that we know what their services are for, and more critically, what qualifies Andile Ramaphosa ahead of any other South African child. We were concerned when Duduzane Zuma was doing likewise. We ought to be just as concerned as South Africans when the same is being done through Andile Ramaphosa.
Can I play devil's advocate here and say when people decide to fund the DA's political campaign, what do they hope to achieve or gain?
Vuyo, we've misdiagnosed this matter to be about campaign financing. In future, somebody will say, whatever donation was made to Mr. Smith, that was for some internal campaign. Whatever donation was made to Mr. Mantashe, who in building up fences at his house, that was for a campaign. When Nomvula Mokonyane was getting bribe packs and bags from Louis Vuitton, that was for some campaign. How is it different when Mr. Ramaphosa gets 500,000 in this regard? This is not about campaign financing. It will be wrong to diagnose it likewise. When it comes to campaign financing, it would go directly to a political party, and it would be for the purpose of election campaigning. And many South Africans from ranging amounts have come forth and said, this is what we want to do for the purpose of elections. In this instance, you're dealing with a company that has been found in the, has major allegations of it in the State Capture Commission, financing politicians, and further on, getting deals from the state. I think BOSASA bought itself a president, and I think we need to investigate this matter fully. If there was no challenge, we would have already instituted a commission of inquiry. We would have already ensured the fact that all contracts are seized and investigation properly done. none of which has been forthcoming.
Now, in your very public spat with investigator Paul O'Sullivan, and I'm not for a second interested in the insults and threats, but here's a paragraph from Paul O'Sullivan that I'd like you to respond to. I'm only going to quote bits and pieces of it. It says, the president has no knowledge as to who contributed towards CR17 and did not want to know so that he would not feel any obligation at a later stage to such contributors. And then later on he says, the initial intention by CR17 was to return the funds to Bosasa. However, this was not possible because the funds had not come from Bosasa. They had been channeled through a third company's bank account, and that third party is in liquidation, and it is clear that the bank account operated unlawfully. You don't accept that, obviously.
Clearly, I mean, there are a few things that we should know. One is the starting point. The president knew his son was involved with Bosasa. It's not like Bosasa allegations started yesterday. They've been going on forever. And so in violation of an Executive Ethics Act, it says there must be a clear or a perceived conflict of interest. This is crucial to start off with. On the second matter, to suggest that $500,000 can end up in a campaign account and the president doesn't know, well, here's something that's anomalous. The president, when it was asked about state capture, he said he didn't know what was happening. When he was asked as deputy president what Mr. Zuma was involved with, he said he didn't know. Now, I find it quite anomalous that there are people who will come forward, and now, when there's a direct contribution into his campaign financing, he still does not know. And I think the excuse to say he didn't want to know so as to not create this conflict of interest, the affidavit I asked him about in Parliament was specific. It said, your son received this amount, and furthermore, the president should have known. He should have known that it is wrong for his son to ultimately be involved with the Bosasa, knowing the history that it is. On a final point for you, I think we would be incorrect to reduce this to simply campaign finances. Bosasa's history of buying politicians is well known and actually, in fact, has already been demonstrated in the State of Capture Commission. This is a system of corruption that locks up a few, that benefits a few, at the expense of the many South Africans who are sitting at home.
Now, the EFF has threatened to bring Thursday night's State of the Nation address to a halt if by then President Ramaphosa will not have answered journalists' questions around this very same matter. Will the DA support the EFF on Thursday? If it does, what does it threaten to do?
On the 22nd of February, the president will arrive for question and answer sessions. Tomorrow night is a special sitting, and I think not only do we have to deal with the question of corruption, but frankly, 4 out of 10 South Africans are unemployed, and therefore it is not in our fundamental interest to say we bring the entire State of the Nation address to a halt on the basis of an act of corruption which is destroying our economy. We also want to understand what plans are there for jobs, what plans are there for healthcare and education? What plans are there to secure our people? What plans are there to ensure that our borders are protected? This is a question that's far broader than just Mr. Ramaphosa's own involvement with Bosasa. It goes broader than that. Therefore, it will be important that we acknowledge the act of corruption, but allow for the State of the Nation address to proceed.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much for your time this evening, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Mr. Musi Maimane.